Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Tastemakers podcast here on We Know Scripted TV. I am your host, Taran Armstrong, and we are here today on this podcast to talk about the latest in the world of TV and film. What's new, what's worth watching, what's worth skipping, all of that nonsense. And with me to talk about it all is Grace. How you doing, Grace?
I'm doing well, Taran. Excited to chat about all the TV that's on right now.
Yes. I feel like we've talked about how we're definitely in this period of time where there's a lot of big shows happening, a lot of big shows coming. But I've also noticed this past couple of weeks, like lots of smaller shows coming out as well. Lots to talk about today. There were a few shows that we mentioned last week that one of which at the very least really hit for me, and I think has made a bit of a name for itself. We'll talk about that. We've got a bunch of new shows coming up this week. We got like a couple movies to talk about as well.
Yeah. So I had thrown out a question in the former Pusher Recaps Discord this week that I think people sort of like misinterpreted it slightly, the point I was trying to make. So I want to ask you this question, and I mostly actually want to ask the audience this question, Taran, which is, I wanted to know, has there been another point in terms of in television history, which I'm sure the answer is yes, but I want to know specifically, where this many shows are all airing at the exact same time? And I think where people were being confused, they're like, oh, 2014 was great, Mad Men, Breaking Bad, Game of Thrones. And I was like, yeah, but like, if you look at actually when those shows aired, like, you have this, I think 2014 was the last sort of like golden age of television. I think where you have basically everything I just mentioned. I mentioned Mad Men. There's a bunch of shows in that sort of time period that come out. But if you look at it, like any HBO, for example, show, any HBO Sunday night show is only ever going to have one HBO show on. So right now we have The White Lotus sort of filling our HBO slot, but we also have on Apple Severance airing, and we also have stuff dropping on Netflix, and we have The Pit on Max. Like, we have so much happening right now. And I feel like I couldn't really find a good answer of the last time it was like this fun to have this much good to amazing television on. I feel like we're like in it kind of right now, but
I think you're probably right. I mean, like, I mean, like what happened last night is that I was like, I have been, and now part of this could be that we are just doing this podcast, and because of
it's
that,
true.
watching more
It's
TV.
definitely true. But yeah.
But last night I was like, okay, basically every night it's been like, well, what is the thing that I've got to watch? Like,
Yes.
there's a new thing, like there's a Pit episode I'm behind on, or like I'm a couple episodes. I got Wheel of Time to watch now. Like,
Yeah.
it's always been like something to, and usually, like, typically how it works is that, like, because I watch a show while I eat dinner. That is the big show that I watch, the one I pay attention to. It happens while I'm eating dinner at night. That's kind of like the prime spot to do it. And I'd say under most circumstances, there's like one, maybe two shows a week where it's like, here is Thursday night or Sunday night. I'm going to watch this show and eat dinner, or maybe I have to wait a day because it airs too late for me now on the West Coast. Actually, no, it would have been the opposite. When I was in the East Coast, it would have been like that. And then other nights I would have like another show that I'm like catching up on, that like how I'm going back and watching all of 6 Feet Under was like a thing I did a decade ago. But right now, it has been a constant stream of, there's still more new things to watch. But especially like basically Thursdays would load me up. I had at one point Traders, Severance, The Pit. I have shows like Jet Lag now on Wednesday. Like, just a constant stream of shows that I end up getting behind on. So last night I was like, wow, I think I finally don't have a show to watch. And then I went, oh no, White Lotus.
Yeah. I just think like, and I think and my point is mostly of like stuff that's airing at the same time. We're in a particular like set of weeks we have it. So I'm sure that there is on time. I think especially I was thinking about when I was in high school, like I used to love Thursday night on NBC. we're basically at one point, I'm pretty sure you could go and find this, where like The Office, Scrubs, Parks and Rec, and Community all probably aired within a 2-hour span. So already there, you're getting like 4 shows in literally a 2-hour block. So I'm sure it exists. I don't know if it's happened in the streaming era or not. I think part of that too is probably because like, you know, whether or not we think Adolescence, which we'll talk about later, is like, this amazing show, it dropped all of its episodes at once. So does it kind of count in this model? But I think it's just a really interesting, I think you're right that we're watching it. And the other thing I got was like, well, not everyone's watching those. I'm like, no, I know, but that's kind of the point, that I feel like with different people, you have different people who are sort of like being drawn to these things. And you can kind of be like, oh yeah, that's totally fair that like, The Pit is the first thing you watch on Thursday, or White Lotus is the thing that you're like waiting all week to watch. Everybody sort of has different things, menus.
Yeah, and I think what I would say is that even before I did this podcast, I was always somebody that kept up on like the latest things to be watching, even if I wasn't always capable of watching all of the things. And especially in terms of like trying to keep track of like what are like the good shows that people really like that have over an 8.0 on IMDb or something like that. And yeah, I just don't think that there has been. I can't think of a time that there has been this many shows on the air at the same time for you to watch. So it's definitely interesting. It's definitely I do think it's particularly good.
Someone's gonna come back and be like, February to March 2006 was a very good. I'm like, that's great. I think it's very interesting.
I think if we want to make the claim, or if we want to be able to rebut the claim, we need to have a concrete
I agree
formula. So maybe it is like a certain rating on a website of like this many shows with this rating or above at the same time.
Very fun. Okay.
All right. Well, anyway, speaking of shows,
you could pretty much use that segue every week.
Listen, I got it. A couple of news items this week, primarily some announcements, and one big one kind of came out of nowhere. Black Mirror was announced. Season 7 of Black Mirror has been announced to start to drop on Netflix April 10th. So that is less than a month away.
Yeah, it had we knew it was coming. This was a trailer drop and a date announcement. The casting this season looks so good, and I think noticeably, people might be, if you're watching the YouTube channel, the trailer, still from the trailer is up. It is from one of the episodes, and this season has a sequel to that episode.
Yes.
For the first time in Black Mirror, they are revisiting one of the, I believe that's true, for the first time, revisiting one of the worlds that they built, but the whole thing just is like filled top to bottom with like very fun people, Taran. I'm very excited for this.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question has to be asked: when was the last time Black Mirror was a respected television show? And I think the answer is probably season 4 when they aired the first USS Callister. I think that was probably the one. That one, they had Hang the DJ, they had Black Museum. I feel like that was kind of like the last universally praised or close to praised season. Season 5 had some dips in terms of perception, I think.
There's a turning point, Taran. I think we all know what can you spot the turning point?
Well, the big turning point for me is season 3.
But I think I mean like what in terms of being good or bad. What do you mean?
Well, they're just like the first 2 seasons were not it was not a Netflix show. It was a show in the UK. There were 3 episode seasons. Then they moved it to Netflix. Season 3, 6 episodes. It was a distinct shift in tone, but still very good.
Okay, let me give you then there's eras. There is the OG Black Mirror. There is then the like move to Netflix era, and then there is the post Bandersnatch era, which I think Bandersnatch is the turning point for me in terms of where it basically was like, maybe we're kind of over.
I wonder how many people had the same experience as me with Bandersnatch, where I was like, this has to be good. And then I kept going and I was like, This is, I mean, there's got to be something here, and then being like, I guess it was bad because I don't know what. Like,
Yeah, and then I think like it's interesting. 5 is just 3 episodes, I think, which is like that's where I feel like they were less episodes at the yeah. Seasons 1 and 2 are only 3. 5 goes back to being a 3-episode season. So it's incredibly forgettable. Apologies to any of the episodes in that set. Then season 6 comes around. This new season that aired in 2023. I feel like was pretty well liked, but wasn't, I feel like, getting like so much attention, and then they also did this thing of sort of genre bending into horror for a bit. I really do think if you look at sort of the lineup for season 7, and this could just be me being an optimist and hoping for something that won't come, and I'm getting my hopes up too high, it does look like I won't say return to form, but I'm like, boy, I'm very excited for season 7.
here's a sad little journey for me, at least. Black Mirror. I am a Black Mirror hipster. I was on board with Black Mirror season 1, like right away. I was in college at the time. Telling
You were like, he's doing
people,
what to a pig? All right, I'm in. All right.
Exactly. I watched the first episode and I was like, this is incredible. I'd never seen anything like it. I liked, episode 2, 15 Million Merits, is still my favorite episode in the entire series. And I was in college being like, guys, you have to watch this show called Black Mirror. And of course, nobody did because nobody knew how to find it. And also nobody listened to me. And then it came to Netflix and it was one of those, oh, man, this is incredible. It's, coming to the US, became this massive thing. Season 3, I thought was amazing as well. Again, it was a change, but it was a change I enjoyed. You get things like Shut Up and Dance, San Junipero, Hated in the Nation, I really liked. And then season 4 comes along and it was good. It was good. I was like, but it wasn't quite like all the way there. I did like Hang the DJ a lot. And then season 5 comes along, and now we're really starting to get into like the backlash era for Black Mirror. And season 6 comes 4 years after season 5. I didn't even realize until this podcast, as I was just looking this up, I never even finished season 6, and I didn't even realize it. I've only watched 3 of the episodes.
Okay, let me just so you finished, which I think most people thought was I think there's differing opinions on which one is the best one. You're just left with these last 2,
Maisie Day and Demon 79.
Yeah, you're left with the Zazie Beetz one
watch.
and the
I didn't even realize that. I didn't remember that I didn't finish that season.
Yeah.
And that's terrible. Like, Twilight Zone is one of my favorite shows of all time. I grew up watching those episodes constantly. I really, really loved Black Mirror. So, I'm not overly excited for Black Mirror season 7, but man, I would love it if it was a true return to form, for sure.
So, well, what do you make of returning to the USS Callister? What do you make of this? I think that there's a way in which that feels kind of in line to me with some of the stuff they did in season 5, where they dived into horror, and I feel like, to me, I think I saw an article recently, and I'll try to pull up who it was, but it was basically this like article that's like Black Mirror season 7 Black Mirror needs to remember what it was, kind of, which I think is like, I actually like the horror stuff, but I don't think that that's like the most strong take to be like, yeah, the more you try to do this, the more I feel like, it's not quite having that same thing that it had at the beginning. There's a world where revisiting the USS Callister right here is like a little bit like, God, we really got to go. You couldn't have had a new idea, but for the most part, I'm pretty excited by revisiting it.
Yeah, I mean, I can agree with that in general. I think that like part of the issue with Black Mirror maybe is that it feels a little too in love with its own vibe, if that makes sense. And instead of trying to make comments on society, it feels like it's more just trying to like find Black Mirror-y things to do, I think is maybe, and that's a very vague and bad criticism, but like, it's how I feel in my brain. So the idea of going back to another one of a previous episode definitely could be a bad thing. But we'll see.
I think
I'm not overly judgmental at the thought of it.
To articulate, I think a little bit, and not to put words in your mouth, but I think that oftentimes the really successful early Black Mirror stuff was how it finished its story. You sit with a feeling, it's trying to tell you something, and then it feels like they worked backwards to get there. I feel like modern Black Mirror feels front focused in the ideas of like, oh, that's a Black Mirror idea, and then but they don't really know how to make that say something. As opposed to, I think the really early ones are like they built it back, and maybe, it's Charlie Brooker who does almost all of this. I think last season he had a couple, or at least one. Is last season maybe the first time he wrote all the episodes. He had a co-writer, which he's done before, but yeah, I feel like maybe that's it. But in addition to the USS Callister folks that we have returning, like Jimmy Simpson and Kristen Milioti, coming off of a Golden Globes nomination, is the cast for me. This Paul Giamatti, Emma Corrin from The Crown, Billy Magnuson, Chris O'Dowd, Harriet Walter is going to be in it. Will Poulter. This is a very exciting cast to me.
I feel like casting for Black Mirror has been amazing. Basically,
I agree with that.
Moved into Netflix,
yep.
And even before that, really, I mean, 15 Million Merits was my introduction to Danny Kaluuya, who went on to have a great career. So yeah, I mean, I think casting has been great for the show. Period.
I think the fact I was trying to pull up is that I think Jesse Armstrong is the only person to ever written an episode that doesn't also include Charlie Brooker with the writing credit. That was the fun fact I was trying to pull about writing with Black Mirror. So.
Well, if you're going to choose somebody,
I know.
A bad pick. All right, so that is Black Mirror coming soon. We'll see.
Yeah.
But another piece of news drops. Ted Lasso is in fact returning for a season 4-ish, but a new sort of setup is kind of the idea, like maybe a soft reboot of the show is, I think, what they're trying to go for. But I never finished season 3, so I can't.
Okay, here's my I thought that this was a little bit there was some news, I think last year, where they had extended some contracts of some folks. I think Rebecca Waddingham, and there's at least one other person where they extended those contracts. And that was basically like, if we ever want to do it, we basically have to kind of like lock them in we have to like look like we're going to do something in case we ever want to bring you back. I kind of felt like it was maybe like a little bit of fake news to be like, it's coming back for season 4. Complete egg on my face. They are fully coming back. And part of this is the thing that I'm going to have to fight about Ted Lasso within myself, which is that I really love the 3-season arc that Jason Sudeikis as Ted Lasso has. And they've already I don't know if this is confirmed. It's not confirmed, but it's been reported that he'll be on the show. I mean, it's Ted Lasso. They're not like, there was this rumor of like, it's going to be called something. It would be like, Richmond FC, or there's a thing where they changed the name of the playbook or something. Ted was writing the book that's being written about Ted Lasso, and they were going to change it from being about Ted Lasso to being about somebody. Blah blah blah.
I believe he's the only person confirmed right now to be in the new show. Is
from Apple potentially. I think a lot of
officially confirmed.
And then I think with the reporting, it's kind of the opposite. It's like basically everybody is sort of being reported to come back except for Jamie Tart, who I've also heard of some podcast. He's he's like a Shakespeare. He's brilliant. Completely judge a book by its cover. But nonetheless, I think I have to like just be fine with the fact that obviously Apple wants to do this. Obviously, they want to bring back Ted Lasso. Until Severance beat it, I believe it's the most watched show in Apple TV. So of course they're going to try to bring it back. It's immensely successful. I just have to be okay with it and be happy that I'm getting more Ted Lasso rather than, live in the world where I got sort of like what I thought was like a really good 3-season story of a show and a character arc that they're obviously going to go in and mess with and tangle with. That's fine. I'm fine with it. I'll watch Ted Lasso. Yeah.
We've talked plenty about Ted Lasso on this podcast already, so I don't think we need to go too in depth here beyond the little bit that was released, but that's the news. Season 4 is coming at some point. Okay, so We do have some new shows to talk about. New shows this week. The first of which, of course, we've already talked about this, Grace, in our recap. The Wheel of Time dropped first 3 episodes of season 3. And I honestly think the response has been fairly close to where I thought it would be, which is, this is good. This is a step up from season 2. I actually feel like it's fairly on par with season 2 personally, but that's because I thought season 2 was already pretty good. And I think what happens with the Wheel of Time is that there's so much negativity around the show that when it comes back and you're actually watching an episode, you're like, oh, this is a lot better than I remember or thought it was. And you're like, what a step up. But in reality, it was probably kind of always that fine. But in general, it has been good. I think we both commented that the first episode felt a little clunky. There were really just moving a lot of pieces around in order to make sure everything was set for the rest of the season. However, once they got into episodes 2 and 3, things felt properly in place and really found its rhythm. And it's just, at the very least, very fun fantasy to watch. It has me always wanting more, and I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I do think if you look at Rotten Tomatoes, I do believe it has its highest audience and critic score so far of any season. Obviously, that's just 3 of the eventual 8 episodes. I think my recommendation is, like, if you are not this like avid book reader, and if you are and you haven't watched it, you don't need my recommendation. Otherwise, I think it's a really enjoyable show. If you're looking for something you can really like dig your teeth into, there's like so much that happens on this show. There's a lot going on. The world building is obviously like incredibly good. It's why people like fell in love with the 14 books in a series. It's I think it's good and worth checking out. If you fell out of it because you didn't like what was happening before, I don't think you're going to be overly pleased with the way the show has started, but I don't think you need my recommendation either. So that's fun so far. Fun.
All right. The other big show, though, for the week, we briefly mentioned it last week. Adolescence dropped on Netflix, and I was watching it like right away. Basically, I just happened to be looking for something to watch, and I was looking like, oh, what are the new shows this week? Oh, Adolescence has dropped. Watched the first episode, and then was like, whoa. And like started looking online and saw that this is like, people are really into this show and it's kind of blowing up a little bit. You can even see here, like, already 17,000 ratings on IMDb. This is it is a Netflix show, but it's a show produced in the UK by Jack Thorne, who was behind Toxic Town, amongst plenty of other shows and movies, and Stephen Graham, who is acting in the show. He's really starting to get recognition for how great an actor he is. And it's a 4-episode show. We mentioned last time about a 13-year-old accused of a murder. And it's phenomenal. I mean, something that I didn't know about the show before I went in, and that isn't really a spoiler because it's immediately apparent, is that each episode is a single take through the entire. They're all oneers. A single take is maybe the wrong way to say it. They're all oneers. So there are no cuts, and I'm sure there are some hidden.
I only caught one, I think,
as they usually are, but
yeah.
They don't like. First of all, I'm a big sucker for oneers personally. All the way back to Children of Men and before that. Like, I love oneers because they really, I think, put you in the moment a lot more than a typically edited scene might. And this show really captures that. So this is a fairly, I think, like, common thing you might see. Oh, there's it's a murder. Who did it? There's a boy who's suspected of doing it. Like that. None of that is too, strange. But the approach itself is different, where it's essentially 4 episodes, 4 little moments in time that capture this story. The performances are amazing. ultimately where they go with this, I think, is part of why the show is popping as well. Not just the performances, not just the method that they're telling the story, but also the direction that they go with it and the themes of this story. Adolescence, in the first episode, you might be like, well, why is this called Adolescence? And you start to see why over the course of the next few episodes. This is not just about a murder. This is about a sort of culture that kids are growing up in now. And there's so much, I think, to praise about this. I definitely think it's worth checking out. And I really enjoyed it.
The reason you're into oneers is I thought you're into zero and oneers because you're a robot, and that's fine, right? No, I love this. I watched all 4. I watched 2. I think there was a couple days after you had like sent me another, being like, oh, okay, yeah, actually, like, it's really good. Like, maybe put it on your radar to watch. So I watched 2 episodes back to back, and then gave it some time because it is very heavy, and then watched the other 2. Something I'm just gonna say, like, up front, is that when I was a little younger, my brother went to jail, and when he was technically a minor, and so it hit pretty like close to home in terms of, especially the first episode. I remember sort of a similar-ish day to what happened to them in episode 1, and for me, episode 1 and episode 4 are sort of the standout ones for me. Particularly, there is a way in which the things that they sort of hone in on to represent the larger things of that they're trying to talk about, the themes you're saying, like episode 2, it really gets into, like, not just this specific example, but how it's culturally, like, there is a certain culture and pervasiveness of things happening that I think is, like, really well done. For me, episode 4, as like somebody who hasn't, and it's, I feel I'm very cautious to say this in a way turn, so just if you bear with me while I articulate myself, which is, I think it's very rare to see the story that they tell in episode 4, and without sort of spoiling things, I'll try to be careful, which is the way in which crime can impact the family members of people who commit crimes. And I say that knowing that, like, I do think a lot of times we should obviously put attention and to the direct victims of crime, right? And there's, the way we've talked about even that over the years about when things happen, about wanting to make sure, like, we often remember the person who committed a crime rather than the person who was the direct victim of it. It really hit home for me this last episode because it's so much about what if you love somebody who does something wrong, and how do you how do you navigate all of that, and how it affects your life and the ways in which you, like, especially as a parent, like, is it your fault or is it your kid, all of that stuff. I think it's, like, extremely complicated and interesting, and I thought this show just does, like, it's really incredible. I'm so intrigued to know more about the show in terms of the way I imagine that I want to know how many takes they did. I want to know if it was like, did they prepare for it like they would prepare for a play? Like, the way in which, like, the camera is moving around with such intentionality to, like, it's not like the whole thing is happening and it's in one shot. It's moving around the whole time. And so even when you're not off camera, like, somebody might leave the screen and that might be in a scene that's, like, upstairs. And what were they doing in that time period? Like, were they still at, like, I want to know all of the little details about the show, because I think it's hitting on so many different things. On thematically, it's incredibly, like, powerful and resonant, and I think it's, like, a very interesting and compelling show. I think that the performances are really good, and then it's, like, the way they chose to tell this story that I think is, like, sort of fascinating on top of it. So it's just this really layered thing. It's 4 episodes. It's a tough topic, so I wouldn't say it's, like, super easy to binge, but also I did watch it, like, in a weekend because I thought it was just so good. So I can't, praise this enough, I think.
Yeah. And I'm curious to see where it goes from here. I think that it has popped off a bit. I think that it was probably it was certainly one of the biggest shows of the week. And it is just like a one-off thing. It's not like it's gonna, like, I imagine, continue into they could certainly do, like, an anthology
100%.
in this style if it really hits hard enough. I don't know how many things Stephen Graham has been behind creatively outside of acting. It looks like not much. So he did a show called Boiling Point. Oh yeah, I remember the show.
Yeah.
So this could be big for him as well, especially as I've talked about. Like I've seen a lot of buzz around him as an actor. He's been around for a long time, of course, but I think he's really starting to receive some attention here. So interesting stuff. Definitely check out Adolescence. I think that it's something that everyone should give a shot here. All right. A few other shows that aired last week, though. We talked about Dope Thief, dropped on Apple TV. This is the Brian Tyree Henry show, about the drug thieves who pose as DEA agents. I watched the first 2 episodes of this, as they only dropped 2 episodes. And I know, Grace, you liked this show.
I liked it a lot. I think the thing that I said is that like without so I got to watch it ahead of this. So I got it like actually very early in terms of like press screeners. And so I actually got it before there was marketing out for it. So in terms of like we were talking last week and I was like, I thought this was gonna be a little more of a romp, and it's not a romp. And I think like when you watch the trailer, obviously, like it's not a romp. It's like there is a
It is very much the opposite of a romp.
It's the opposite of a romp.
Very serious, and I would call it mopey.
It's pretty mopey, pretty like gritty, pretty dark, like and I think I thought the premise of it was a little more like here's a good example. I thought it was more, and I don't mean this from the quality of the show, but like Better Call Saul than Breaking Bad. In terms of Better Call Saul, like there's sort of a like who Saul Goodman is. I thought there was a little more of like that type of thing than like I could get into the serious nature of it. But no, it's very serious. But I do think it's incredibly well acted. I think it's pretty well written. I think Brian Tyree Henry had like passed on this, like basically was sent the script, and then his agent was like, you should probably read it, and he loved it so much that he became the executive producer on it. I think I might have said that last week, so apologies if I'm repeating myself, but I think you can tell just how much he cares about this. And then I dropped an interview that I did with him and Wagner Moura, and they just seem like the best buds. There is a little bit of a, have you heard the tea behind the show, Taran?
I did. I was seeing some of this. I don't know like the details.
Speaking of
but
Better Call Saul, but one of the actors from that show, Michael Mando, who plays Nacho in that show, was allegedly supposed to be in the role that Wagner Moura was in. And the rumor is, obviously, I don't know, take for this what you will, got in a physical confrontation with Brian Tyree Henry and was actually removed from the show, and they brought in Wagner Moura basically last minute. And when you watch, I wish we released the video. They are so chummy together. They like love each other. They are like joking and bantering, and I think you can just feel that in the show. So I really like it. The other piece I think is like pretty fascinating about the show, Taran, is that in the first episodes, have they talked much about his relationship with his father in the show? I've watched.
Yes, his father is like in prison, and he is working with like a lawyer to try to like get him out, and his father seems to, yeah.
So yeah, and his father is played by Ving Rhames in the show. You might know him from the Mission Impossible movies, a lot of other stuff. Okay, while they were filming the show, Brian Tyree Henry is having this like emotional thing in the show. He's playing a character who has like this tense emotional relationship with his father. They stop the show because of the writer's strike. Brian Tyree Henry's father passes away, and then he has to go back and continue filming the show and having these like scenes with his father where they are having these emotional like fraught relationships while his actual father has passed away. And I just think like that is like I don't know, it like gives it like you could sort of feel, I think in the show you could sort of feel. So all to say, I really liked it. How many episodes did they drop on the first week? Was it
2 episodes were dropped?
2,
and there are 8 total.
Yeah, we'll come weekly after that. So yeah, I like it. I think it's like, it is heavy. It's these two guys, they pretend to be DEA agents to steal drugs and money. They themselves are addicts and obviously criminals, and have fraught relationships and all of that comes with it. But
I think the addendum I would add to this too, in terms of plot, is that like at least so far in these first 2 episodes, like things go wrong very quickly, and this is not really, I think, a show about them continuously robbing places as DEA agents. More so, that was like the inciting incident to get them involved in the current thing that they're involved in.
Correct.
I personally, I can see that there's like quality here. I did struggle to get invested. It is so heavy, and like it just kind of goes in, and I feel like I haven't been grabbed to be like really invested in the storyline. And so I was not like hugely into Dope Thief. I'm personally not sure if I'm gonna continue, but it's one of those shows that's like I feel like it's almost there, but I'm just not quite sure. And maybe if I had more episodes to watch at the time and I just kept going, it would have eventually got me there. But watching these first two, I did struggle a little.
Can I tell you, I think that this is a show that I was just watching it. I kind of had this similar vibe to it that I was like, I think that actually, what's the phrase where it's like, I think what people will find is that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. Where
yeah.
I feel like when you sort of finish it, you're like, ah, God, they like did a lot. But each individual episode, you're not going to have the thing of being like, oh my God, like that just happened. You're going to like walk away being like, that's a pretty good performance. And when you think about it a little bit more, like actually it was like an amazing performance. You know, that's kind of how I feel. Like I'm not telling people that they need to like, you got to watch this every week in appointment viewing or whatever. I think it's very good. I think the best part of it is actually Brian Tyree Henry. And if that's kind of like not enough for someone as well, I think that's totally fair. So
I think probably my strategy for this will be, I've watched the first two episodes. I'm probably going to wait till it finishes and then see what people generally thought. Unless people at some point go, "Oh no, you need to be watching this," and then I might watch the rest of the season from there if I feel like I've got time and I want to.
Fair enough.
Okay. We also had Long Bright River. This was the Amanda Seyfried police show. This to me was actually kind of similar to Dope Thief in that it was just so heavy and very mopey. I will say this: I don't think it helped either show that I watched these back to back, because it was just a lot. And they go in and they have these like deep, tragic backstories, and it's just like, oh man, this is just like not very fun. Long Bright River, I just couldn't. I watched one episode of this. I think there's only one episode out. I'm not sure if actually I don't remember. No, they dropped all the episodes. I just watched only one of them.
This is how I feel about it, and my thing isn't about Dope Thief because I didn't go back to watch Dope Thief again. But mine was actually in comparison to Adolescence. I thought that the both shows were covering extremely heavy topics, and one is just like far and away more engaging than the other. I will say there is a thing at the end of episode 1 of Long Bright River that was like, oh, okay, yeah, like that's something. And I don't know how you kind of fix that because they, one episode, and if they've dropped it all, it doesn't really matter. Like I guess I should have immediately went to watch the next one if I thought it was like, but I didn't really feel compelled to do that. That's kind of, I definitely felt that this was like a little too meandering, a little too like, it's obviously good and well acted, but I was like, coming off of I think you had watched Adolescence earlier in the week, maybe. I don't know how long it took you, but I was like coming off watching it Saturday, Sunday, and then watched this early Monday and was feeling like, God, I don't know, like compared to the other, like I just feel like there's something else over here that's doing heavy, but in such an engaging way. And I'm like, this one feels, it's good, but it's not the best thing. That's kind
of I have to admit I watched Adolescence in one sitting. That was
That's a lot. That's a lot.
It was a lot. Yeah. But I mean, this is exactly the kind of show where it's like it is quality, and maybe like 15 years ago when there were far fewer shows out, this would be a thing I would have invested more time in. But like, it's just not quite there for me. It just doesn't have the oomph. So I did not get into Long Bright River.
I like that you were like, oh, they filmed Adolescence is a oneer. I'm gonna do a oneer. I'm gonna watch them all.
Exactly.
The thing about me for Long Bright River too is the show opens up with a group of like characters that I'm like, oh, okay, like, oh, is that we're gonna, which is like the show deals with addiction and homelessness. That's like
Yep.
primarily, and then obviously, and then she's a cop and she's
And
looking at it from the police side of things. Yes.
sorry, just to
No.
interrupt,
Yeah.
just briefly, the fact that it's a show about addiction and homeless, and the main character is talking about how like people don't pay enough attention, they don't care enough to like for these people, and I'm watching the show like I don't really care about this show, made me feel bad.
And you don't feel bad, but I feel the same way, except that
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, and then we were like, and then we're doing it from the cop's point of view, and I'm like, that's fine. I'm not against
Yeah,
cop,
yeah.
like I'm not like, so like whatever. It is what it is. But I was like, I feel like they like showed us a group of people, and I'm like, oh, wouldn't a story about like the people, like specifically like the main character, like I thought maybe she would be one of the people, which she's connected, but she's not. She's a cop and she's not homeless, and they're like, but actually the story is over here, and I'm like, like I feel like we're one step past where we need, like we, but it's fine. It's fine. I might check out one more episode. The thing that is putting it is that like I feel like I had this a couple times. People were like, hey, check out Long Bright River. I had this this past week. People were like, you should watch it. So maybe they watched more than me and liked it. So I don't know. I'd be interested. I'm going to look to see what the episode ratings are, I think, too. But
There was also a stark contrast for me, having just watched Adolescence, where the writing and acting for the child actors in particular was phenomenal, and I felt like watching Long Bright River. She has a son, and like the writing for the son was just not it for me. It was just one of those things where like this is not how children speak from my perspective.
So IMDb has the episode 1 is the lowest rated, and it goes up until
That's
the
fair,
finale,
yeah.
which dips a little bit. And I actually wonder if that's like that to me is like, okay, maybe I'll actually watch. Like if the next one is actually, which is not that much different, 7.8 and 7, and these are very small numbers of people who are rating this. This is like 50-ish people each time. So like I'm not giving this a lot of kudos, but like credibility. But if I watch the next one and it's better, that's something. If I'm like immediately feeling like that's the same or worse, I think I'm gonna have to bail on Long Bright River.
All right. Well, there is another Netflix property that dropped this week, and it has taken the internet by storm. It is the #1 movie out, especially in a week where the box office crumbled. The Electric State is kind of the movie of the week, and Grace, you watched it. I also watched it in the sense that I just before we recorded this, I was watching it and then had to pause it when I where I thought it was about to end, and then I saw that there was actually still 36 minutes left, and I was like, oof. And then I didn't end up unpausing it, actually, unfortunately. So
here's what I'll say, Taran. This movie costs like $350 million, something like that. A lot of money. Many millions, hundreds of millions.
Russo brothers. They're the original Captain America directors. Yeah. Marvel. Very they have some. They're behind some very very big hit, good movies.
The CGI is well made. Like it's like there's a lot of robots in this Electric State. It's
visually very cool.
Yeah, there's a lot of different robots and they're designed very, interestingly, and they look right. It doesn't look like bad CGI. Also, at the same time, visually, the movie is, it has an aesthetic that I'm like, okay, yeah, right, yeah, fine, yeah.
Like the designs are cool. There are some good shots, but like the environments, I would say, are pretty lame.
Post-apocalyptic, robot destruction world where there are still some robots around, and then just like the story and the acting, you're just like,
and the writing, the dialogue.
Okay, all right, fine. Like I get the core idea of the thing is like a perfectly sensible thing to probably even greenlight. Probably not for $350 million, but like for a Netflix movie of like what's happening here, which is essentially like Millie Bobby Brown plays this sort of like orphaned girl who loses her young brother and finds Chris Pratt, who's sort of like a, independent, he's like a trader, he's sort of, a cool, kind of idiotic, he's Chris Pratt basically. And they each have robot companions. That's basically the movie.
It's Chris Pratt like cosplaying as what's his name? Matthew McConaughey.
And then a bunch of the robots are voiced by different people. Taran, before you had said that you would watch this, I really wanted to like quiz you on things, and maybe I'll just like throw
this cast is stacked.
Like, imagine this feels like a Mad Libs to say Brian Cox plays a baseball robot, an old timey baseball robot. You're like Q Kwan's in this movie. Woody Harrelson plays Mr. Peanut. Like, the cast is stacked, and yet
Stanley Tucci, Alan Tudyk.
Isn't what's his name?
Like, they don't even have one of the main characters on the
That's what I'm
page.
saying. What's his name from Breaking Bad? Yeah, Gus Fring. It's there's so much going on in this movie. It's pretty bad. I did watch the whole thing.
Giancarlo Esposito.
Yeah.
Jason Alexander.
It just feels like it's a waste.
Coleman Domingo. Anthony Mackie.
Yeah, it's
area.
Jenny Slate is even in here. Brian Cox. Yeah, it just feels like a waste of money. More so than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I honestly don't really care that it got made or not, other than like this is the exact thing that I think, like, as we just watched the Oscars that we had, I think last year Cord Jefferson, who won for American Fiction, and then this year Sean Baker, like advocating for small money film, like take a shot on $10 million films, instead of and this is more egregious than that. You could have made 30 $10 million films with this, and it feels like that would have been worth it. They obviously have a reason to keep putting Millie Bobby Brown, and like she obviously does not, like, this would probably be watched a bunch, Taran. So
it's the number one movie. It's the number one thing on Netflix right now. It already has over 20,000 ratings on IMDb. Like, it's doing well. It's just, and I found this to be true for a lot of, especially Netflix, but streaming movies in general. I had the same issue with The Gorge. It's just like, it's just so aggressively mediocre, like just very tame and boring. And like, it's not even bad in an interesting way. It's just so bland. Now, this one at least does have like the cool robot designs. And there's like a little montage in the beginning of the movie that I think is by far the best part of the movie, even though it's still not even that great in terms of the writing, the way that they're describing things, but like the visuals of it were really cool. But yeah, beyond that, it just doesn't really work, I think, very well. But but perfectly watchable if you like. This is the thing. It's bland and boring to me. I watch so many things. I don't really have time for something like this. But clearly, for a lot of people, it's something that is perfectly fine to just throw on and watch, maybe with some friends or family, and you're gonna have like a decent time.
Also, just acknowledge that I just think like you and I are probably, and many people listening, are not the target demographic, I think, for this. I don't know what the target demographic is, but it does feel like a thing that like younger than us, I think, is who they are.
I feel like I would love a movie like this that was written well and like, had anything.
The scenes between her and her brother are tough.
They are
tough to watch, Taran. I agree. I can see why it got greenlit. I can like see from the premise of the movie. I get it. It has 3 writers here. I think maybe there's something to be said about how many different things it's trying to do with different robots and people and bad guys and whatever. So
yeah.
I watched a couple of much more fun movies, Taran.
Yes.
The first one that I watched, let me start with Black Bag. The one movie I didn't go see this weekend, which I think actually won the box office, is Novocaine, which I did not go see. I will go see it this week. Black Bag, I thought this was so fun. I think that if this isn't like up your alley, I think it's probably a little too self-indulgent to a degree. Like it is like leaning into the spy thing in a way that I really love, but I totally get if other people think it's a little schlockier maybe than it like.
Is Michael Fassbender just obsessed with playing
I,
this character?
I think so. I think so. Yeah.
He's very good at it, to be fair.
Yeah. Like I have some friends who I think like rated this like a fair bit lower than me. Personally, I quite liked it a lot. I think it's very fun. This is a type of spy movie that is not action oriented. It is people dynamic focus. If you like reality TV, I think you will like Black Bag. That you very early on learn that there is a potential like a mole or a spy or a traitor within their spy organization, and the whole movie plays around that fact, and you're trying to figure out who in this dynamic and this group, all these different characters. It's kind of a murder mystery, but with but about who's the mole. You know, it's so reality TV. It's not like reality TV coded. It's just like it works on that level. And it's pretty fun. It's funny. I think it's like sharp in a way that really works. So I would recommend this movie quite a bit. I'm actually surprised it didn't win. The box. I think it's quite a surprise that Jack Quaid won the box. I know it's not like this amazing box office weekend, but Jack Quaid won the box office with.
I mean, in terms of marketing, I saw Novocaine everywhere, and I think
true.
I saw one preview for Black Bag at one point in my life.
That's true. The other movie I saw this weekend was Opus, which is the new A24 movie, and I had not heard about this movie. And then the day I went to go see it, I went to saw it and was like, how did I not hear about this movie? It is Io Edeberry, John Malkovich, Murray Bartlett, Juliette Lewis is in this movie, Tony Hale's in this movie. It is there's a letterbox review that like the same letterbox review has been done a million times, which is people are going to say this is basically a combination of Blink Twice, The Menu, Midsummer, Get Out, Don't Worry. It's kind of like trying to be in that vein of like super timely, modern, social commentary horror movie. Specifically, she is a music writer who goes to visit a like basically like a music I kind of think like Prince or like of that that ilk, kind of like costumey 80s pop star who has not let people come to see him or made new music in years, and people go to his compound retreat to basically like write an article about him. Different people get to go for different reasons, but that's why Io Edeberry and some of the people she's with are there. This movie is pretty boring and has an incredible last 15 minutes. And if the 15 minutes is what the movie is trying to say, I don't know why they didn't do that the whole time. Because like once it like kicks in at the end, you're like, why didn't you just do this the whole time? This is so good. But you made us hang out with you for an hour and a half and you did like nothing. So that's sort of my critique of Opus. And I get why people don't like it. I think like the ending is fantastic. I just wish it was in that gear the whole time because it finally has something interesting to say, and it doesn't up until that point. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Well, just to touch on Novocaine, neither of us saw it, but it seems to have been received decently by audiences. They think it's fine. However, despite winning the box office, it I think only made like $8 million, which is not a lot. Again, really pretty much nobody went to see movies this weekend is kind of the situation.
I've heard that the action in this movie is really good. I've heard two things. I've heard one, Jack Quaid continues to prove that he's pretty charming. And so this is actually, even though this movie doesn't do like stellar, this seems to be good indication that we'll probably continue to get more of Jack Quaid. And then the other thing is I've heard the action is both good, but also escalates as the movie goes in a way that's actually quite compelling. And so very interesting in that typically we see these things of are like things like the biggest thing happens at the beginning to get us hooked into the movie. This is like things happen throughout the movie and things are escalating each other in a way that's actually quite rewarding and fun. That's what I've heard about the movie. I'll go see it this week. I'm very excited.
This is a new genre I haven't seen before. One-person army action. In the vein of Craven the Hunter and Leon the Professional.
And several Bollywood films. Yes. Okay. All right.
All right. I want to catch up on a couple of shows. One of which, of course, Severance is nearing its conclusion. Next week will be the finale, and we mentioned briefly that there was a couple of episodes in a row where it was feeling like The audience was rebelling a little bit, like, what, this feels a little boring. I would count myself amongst them. I was a bit, I wouldn't say like let down, but because it's not like I was actively disappointed. It was more so that, as I described, I think last week, like, I'm just not excited to watch Severance week to week anymore. It almost, it got to, like, it was only a couple episodes, but all of a sudden I was like, oh, I gotta watch Severance. It almost felt like a chore. Hopefully the finale, which has a lot to live up to, can really come in clutch. But I think for me right now with Severance, how I feel is that they have just been spinning their wheels and delaying us until we get to the finale, which is gonna make it feel more annoying if they do another cliffhanger finale.
Yeah, I think that what I feel like, I like this episode a lot. It did feel like we are so past where this show was, like, and very quickly. And there's a sense of like, because we were not with the characters for the majority of the last 2 episodes, that by the time we came back, I think we were sort of hoping of like, not a return to normalcy, but there's a thing we sort of fell in love with the show for that is very much, I think, like, it's really not in season 2 of the, like, the workplace dynamic, that corporate culture-y thing, the weirdness of like them trying to figure out what's going on at their work, that we've really been missing for most of this season, even if we did get a little bit
Which is
earlier in the
strange
season.
because it felt like they went really far out of their way in order to get us back there and then didn't do
Yeah.
much with it.
Yeah, the end of the first episode feels like we're back, baby. This is like the crew's back at work. And I think that that's been a little jarring for people. But I think in totality, we'll see. But this episode did feel like, an interesting place that apparently this week's finale is an hour and 15 minutes as well. So it's a supersized episode. So yeah.
We'll see. The other show I wanted to touch on, because it's kind of in the same vein, White Lotus, which is nearing its conclusion. I think there are 2 episodes left. Something along those lines.
3. I think this we
3
just
episodes left.
passed the halfway. This was episode 5 of 8. Yeah.
Because I kind of feel similarly about White Lotus, where I'm feeling like there's 6 episodes of good stuff, but it's an 8 episode. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like it's an 8 episode season, but there's 6 good episodes. Because like there's stuff I'm liking in the season that I'm compelled by, but it feels like it's really just like, but not everything, and it feels like it's taking too much time to get to the things I like, and it's repeating itself a little too much before it starts to get more interesting, is kind of how I'm feeling right now about White Lotus.
So I went on the Crying Laughing podcast with Ariel and Amanda this past week, sort of post halfway through, to talk through some theories. One of the things I had flagged that I was feeling like there was a trans story coming. It was definitely not where I thought it was going to happen in the show. I do feel like I was looking at sort of the timeline of sort of a shocking-ish moment that happens each season. And basically, if you like kind of, put the percentage point in the season, it's basically around this time. So I was expecting this episode to have something. It did. I don't think it's quite
technically
the same.
Did, but yeah, not quite.
Yeah, it's not that you see it, but there is a wild conversation that happens that I do feel like, in terms of the social media reaction that I've been seeing, it definitely fits with that.
But it also was just so out of nowhere. It didn't even feel earned, if that makes sense.
I would agree with that. That I feel like I'm almost with the thing about, I thought that Lockie was gonna be I thought that Lockie was trans. I thought that was my thing. There was a lot of like being pulled by mother and father. He's doing posture lessons about his body. I thought he was kind of looking at his brother in a way that was like much more like potentially being sort of awed by his confidence, rather than being like, I'm in love with you. There was a lot of like people wondering about incest stuff happening there. So I feel like I like locked into like, and we haven't really had like a major queer character this season. I was like, maybe he's like going to do like Mike White is going to do like something like trans related. And I feel like Lockie would make a lot of sense. And then the thing happened, and it's like, not that I was right, that there's a lot of like trans stuff, and this season's a little bit about identity. Because like I could have never predicted that that's because it was literally not a moment to like foreshadow the fact that like it would come from this character in this specific this moment. So I'm like a little, I think, in response to what you're saying about that it came out of nowhere, I do think that's true, as opposed to the other two moments, which I think is like someone walking in Armand in season 1 and what Jennifer Coolidge walks in on season 2. There's definitely reason to have like that doesn't come out of nowhere. She just walks in on something, as opposed to, I would agree that this is the most like shocking moment that sort of comes out of that's getting the most attention. The other moment, the Locky Sax moment, is also getting a fair bit of attention, I feel like, online, but not as much as that speech. So yeah.
So yes, that's White Lotus. We'll check back in over the course of the season as well. Anything else before we talk about what's coming up?
Don't think so.
All right, I'm gonna run through some of these because there's a bunch of shows that are coming. One of them is Good American Family. This is gonna be on Hulu. This is about this is based on, I believe, a true story. That about a couple who adopted. This is the tagline on IMDb. Midwestern couple who adopts what they believe is a little girl with dwarfism as they begin to raise her alongside their 3 biological children. Things happen. You might have heard of this. I think I vaguely have. So, who knows if this is going to be good or wildly bad. This is Mark Duplass and Ellen Pompeo. Who knows?
Pretty worried about this one, but like also intrigued, I actually
could be a disaster.
I do think Mark Duplass. So there's an interesting thing that Mark Duplass said in an interview. He developed a show called Penelope, which came out on Netflix. He basically independently produced it and then sold it. And he basically says like he's taking his The Morning Show money and doing stuff that he wants to do, and specifically like letting people make stuff that he thinks is good. So in essence, then I think now about the ideas like, is The Morning Show the only thing that he takes on that's like for money? Do you know what I mean? Like, and not that he like totally probably hates the show or whatever, but like he said, he's like, they pay me way too much and I do it. And so now I'm putting like things that Mark Duplass does at 2. What's the show that he was in?
Strike me as like your artistic end goal.
Unless he thought the script was so fascinating and interesting.
Maybe it's phenomenal. Who knows? I haven't looked into the creator, Katie Robbins.
Yeah. So that's basically.
Oh, she did The Affair. She wrote on The Affair.
Oh,
at
and
least.
Sunny, which
and
was
Sunny,
on Apple
TV.
TV.
She created Sunny.
Oh, that's interesting.
That is interesting, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. I just am like, what bucket am I putting this in? The stuff that Mark Duplass is doing? Is this the like, I gotta make money to do all the other stuff I want to do, or is this the like, what an interesting project I shall sign on for? My worry is that it's the first one and not the latter. So we'll see. I'm definitely gonna watch this. I'm incredibly intrigued by this. So yeah.
All right, another one is a show coming to Netflix called Wolf King. It's an animated fantasy. It's based on a series of books. I don't really know much about it beyond that. I doubt this is gonna be like a massive breakout hit or anything, but it kind of felt like something I might like, so I just wanted to flag it here. And because it's Netflix, it always has a chance to do pretty well. But in the same vein, honestly, as Good American Family, another show based on a true story, this one about a serial killer called Happy Face, based on the Happy Face killer, is coming to Paramount Plus. This is with Annalee Ashford, Dennis Quaid. And this one, I don't know if I trust this current IMDb rating. There's only 19 people, and I don't think the show is even particularly out yet. So this might be just completely nonsense. But this one honestly doesn't strike me as something I will enjoy. But figured I'd flag it here.
Paramount sort of has this. There is sort of like a campiness thing that feels like the fact that this is actually based on a true story to me feels harder to make that tone that I feel like that they do pretty well. Like I'm thinking about here are the shows that I think like fit into like exactly what it's, which is Yellow Jackets, Dexter, Original Sin, and then also I didn't watch this, but you watched School Spirits, and that to me like they feel like there is a level of like campiness thing that works, but none of those, let me just make sure I'm saying, none of those are obviously true stories, right? So it's like, yeah, obviously one, yeah, no, they're not. So now we're going to do one that's a true story. That's to me what I like to feel like I might butt up against with this show. But when Dennis Quaid was, for whoever he is as a person, I thought he was very compelling in The Substance. So we'll see. Yeah.
All right. So then we also have The Residence. This is another Netflix one. This one it is okay. So it is a comedy. The marketing feels like it's a comedy, but the episodes are, I believe, like a good 40 plus minutes. It also is classified as a whodunit. It's inside the White House's staff residence. And the lives of the workers there. Okay, but somebody dies in the White House and they're trying to figure out who it is kind of the whole, and it's kind of like a whodunit in the White House comedy. A lot of actors you might recognize in this show. Apparently not necessarily on the front page of the cast list, but you can sort of see them in the photos here. And it might be fun. I feel like there's a chance this, like, Netflix has been doing pretty well with these kinds of like violent-y comedies, but it could also be bad. Who knows?
Uzo Aduba, that's interesting because like I feel like she has not really had a breakout since her breakout, which was Orange is the New Black, but she was so like specifically, someone,
she was Crazy Eyes.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. So I feel like never really like got a thing to be the leading person in a thing, like, and even in Orange is the New Black, it's a big ensemble and she's a specific character. So interesting. First of all, that it's Netflix picking that up as well, this show, The Residence. I don't know, I'm intrigued, but I don't have like the highest of hopes for this, but yeah. I agree. The one thing that does put me in I think it's Uzo Aduba, and then also that it's a Netflix comedy, but I do think it probably needs to be like, I think one of the things that has worked really well about those other things is that they're so comedy focused, which I do feel like the poster for this does tell me it's going to be comedy, but we'll see.
And then Gangs of London season 3 is dropping now. Gangs of London is a show. Season 1 I thought was incredible. I thought Gangs of London was like, this is the next big thing for me. I really, really loved it. It was created by Gareth Evans, who is basically like a master of action. He is the guy that did The Raid and The Raid 2. And he is very, very good. I think, especially at action, filming it. Just this was like this gangster epic, like big action set pieces, like really, really fun, campy, juicy stuff. Gareth Evans left for season 2, put it in the hands of somebody else whose name I can't remember. And I have never gone from loving a show to dropping it so fast. I think I watched like one episode of season 2. Season 3 is now coming with another new person at the head. It might be a return to form, but if it means you have to get through season 2 to continue the story, I'm not sure I'll be able to get there. And quite frankly, if it's not Gareth Evans, it's probably not going to be worth it anyway, but I figured I'd flag it here. I really feel you could watch just season 1 and it's really, really fun, and you could stop there and probably be fine.
Okay. Interesting.
All right. And then one last, go ahead.
I have some movies once you're done with the TV.
Oh, yes. One last one here. The City Is Ours, I saw, is coming. This is I'm not really sure what this is, but it's a Sean Bean show that is about a longtime member of organized crime, and he reevaluates his future. I don't know. This is a BBC show.
It's a Liverpool. I think it's like a Liverpool crime drama, I believe. Like it's The City Is Ours, spelled City of Liverpool. Yeah. Also, if you have BritBox, Ludwig comes out in America this week on BritBox, I will have an interview I did with David Mitchell coming out this week. So
Very
check
fun.
that out. Yes, very excited. They sent me a little puzzle box, Taran, and I think I might have to mail you this puzzle that I cannot get apart. I can't.
That's so fun.
It's like a little brain teasery thing, and I can't do it. So I think I'll just mail it to you. I feel like you'll be able to get it. Yeah, you're supposed to be able to like pull it apart and put it back together, and I just sit at it angrily all day. So David Mitchell said he is not a puzzler, which I thought was very like, I don't do puzzles. So yeah. Okay, movies wise this week, Taran, will you indulge me? So the first one, there's this movie called Locked that comes out, and I hadn't heard of this, but it's Bill Skarsgård and Anthony Hopkins, and it's a remake, and it's about a man who tries to break into an SUV and then bad things happen, which I feel like is not enough of a premise for it to be a full movie, but it's a remake of a film, so we'll see. Bill Skarsgård intrigues me. This is major dark spoilers, but Anthony Hopkins on the left or on the right looks exactly like the guy from Dark in the poster. It looks like the old man from Dark, which I won't say more. There's also an Aaron Paul horror movie comes out this week called Ash, Taran. It's a woman wakes up on a distant planet and finds a crew of her space station viciously killed. Her investigation into what happened sets in motion a terrifying chain of events. It stars Aaron Paul. So that comes out. I feel like there's just like everyone's like, we're just gonna drop some stuff. I believe the Snow White movie gets a limited release this week.
Yeah, Snow White. There's a lot of news about Snow White. A lot of pessimism about its potential performance, and I think I've seen a lot of stuff about like Disney trying to distance itself from this movie.
There's also a Robert De Niro movie coming out with Cosmo Jarvis from this is the Alto Nights.
Yeah,
that comes out I believe a limited release this week. Also has Deborah Messing in it as well. It's a Robert De Niro crime drama, crime drama. The last thing that I think is really interesting in terms of, it feels like nothing is getting major marketing, but I believe the distributor, the company for Magazine Dreams is dropping their movie this week. And Magazine Dreams is notable because this is the what's his name from he was going to be in Marvel. He was
Jonathan Majors.
It's a Jonathan Majors movie that had wild sort of reviews coming out of whatever film festival it played at, and they were like, we're gonna save this, it's gonna be an Oscar run film. Then obviously everything happened with Jonathan Majors and it got dropped and is now just like quietly being released into theaters. And I think that's just like notable. But apparently he's a bodybuilder. It's a bodybuilder movie, and he is apparently like jacked in this movie. So yeah, it's like a kind of a weird little movie week, but bunch of smaller stuff feels like.
Yeah. All right. Well, that's what we have for you this week then. There's, as I said, plenty of shows to track. That we will track them for you. Coming next week, we'll talk about if any of these shows. Because quite frankly, I'm not sure any of them will pop. Certainly not in the way that Adolescence did. But we'll check them out. Severance will be over by then, so we'll give our final thoughts there. We will continue to recap The Wheel of Time. That the new episode 4 will drop on Thursday. And The Pit is also starting to close in. We didn't mention The Pit here, but it's definitely, like, you can tell it's gearing up. So that'll be fun to talk about. And yeah, that's.
I think we're gonna try to break out a spoiler chat on The Pit as well, and potentially be joined by a special guest. So if people, as they're watching it, have thoughts about The Pit, send them our way, because we will try to do another breakout pod with a special guest after the finale airs. So,
right. Okay. Anything else to plug, Grace?
No, I think that's it. You can check out all my work on Parade and everything else we're doing. Jess and I are recapping Yellow Jackets this week. We have a very special interview lined up for a couple episodes for now, which it's very exciting. It's very fun. People are going to be very excited with who we got. We interviewed Nicole Maines last season, but it's not Nicole Maines, but it's very fun nevertheless.
Oh, All right. Well, that's what we have for you then. Make sure you subscribe to the We Know Scripted TV feed. You can also watch us over on YouTube if you want to see the visuals of what we're talking about. And we'll be back next week to talk about all these things. So thank you for joining us. We'll see all of you next time.